through amid the very large Democratic field, even though he had some memorable moments, particularly on the issue of immigration, which was one of the issues that he was most passionate about out on the campaign trail. He was not able to gain that political momentum. One of the biggest signs of that most recently was the fact that he was not on the last debate stage. So when you're not able to qualify for these debates, you're not able to raise the kind of money and to continue your campaign. You get to a point where you are not able to see a political path forward. So again, Julian Castro just announcing this morning that he is ending his 2020 presidential campaign.
And we're seeing the field become less diverse over time. He was, of course, the only Latino running for president this cycle. MJ Lee, thanks very much. Two foreign policy crises on a very big election year, two very different strategies. On Iran, the president using maximum pressure and isolation, or attempting to, pulling out of the nuclear deal, imposing tough sanctions to try to force Iran's hand. But a very different story on North Korea. The president focused on building his personal relationship with the dictator Kim Jong-un, a love affair as he's described it sometime. He met with him 3 times, face to face. So far, those summits have not paid off. North Korea has just announced it will not stop its nuclear weapons program, and that it will show the world a new strategic weapon soon. Joining me now to discuss this and other threats, Ambassador John Negroponte is former U.S. ambassador to the UN, Iraq, Mexico, and the Philippines. Ambassador, we appreciate you taking the time this morning.
Thank you.
So let's look, if we can, let's focus on Iraq for a moment. Iran deploys these militias in effect to attack the embassy. Iraqi security forces walk away as it happens. As you watch this unfold, does this show to you that Iran, in effect, has the upper hand in Iraq, that it's calling the shots to a great degree there?
Well, I think, well, obviously, as compared to 2003 or 2004, when we were the predominant, overwhelming international influence in Iraq, the situation has changed significantly, and I do think Iran has gained a significant position of influence in that country. But that's not to say that we still don't have influence, and that's not to say that there are not still many Iraqis who I think would like us to continue to play a role in that country. But I think the question of influence is today up for grabs as compared to 10 or 15 years ago. And the other thing, of course, is that we're at a moment of particular significance inside of Iraq because they are at this very moment trying to agree on who will be the next prime minister of that country. Yeah. And disputes of this nature obviously play right into that situation.
No question. One question is the situation for U.S. forces in Iraq, because it is our reporting that those Iranian-backed protesters only withdrew from the embassy when they received assurances that the Iraqi parliament would consider legislation demanding that U.S. forces leave, and the Iraqi prime minister has said that Iraq needs to reassess its relationship with the U.S. Do you think, do you see the position, the deployment of U.S. forces there is at risk now because of those political pressures domestically?
Well, I can't be certain, but there may be a certain amount of theater to that, and there may be also just that they said they'd agree to that in order to end these demonstrations, but I think it remains to be seen. Again, as I said, I think there is a body of Iraqis, an important number of Iraqis, who would like us to continue to play a role, and I think they would welcome a continued security interest. Iraq needs to be on reasonably friendly terms with Iran, on the one hand, because it's its neighbors, but it also wants to have strong friends internationally, including with the United States. I don't think Iraq wants to end up in the place that Iran finds itself today, where it is internationally quite isolated.
Let's talk about that policy, because the Trump administration has attempted, since the president took office, to isolate Iran and therefore extract concessions, withdraw from the nuclear deal, reimpose sanctions, etc. But in response to that, Iran has ratcheted up its hostile activities in the region. It shot down a U.S. drone, a $110 million one. It attacked Saudi oil facilities. It has now orchestrated these protests. I wonder, from your position, is the U.S. approach to Iran failing at this point?
Well, I think that still is to be determined, because the pressures are significant. The economy of Iran is suffering. And I think that we've seen even domestic strife inside of Iran, where there have been protests at the poor economic conditions in that country. So it's having some kind of effect. The question is, and I think you rightly ask, can that be translated into some kind of effective diplomatic outcome? Could we ultimately sit down, for example, and renegotiate some of the terms of the JCPOA, whether it's extending the duration or expanding the coverage of some of its provisions? But I do think there still is the possibility one day of some kind of a negotiation. I just can't tell you when that's going to happen.
Well, President Trump has at times said publicly he'd be willing to go back and talk to Iran, but Iran doesn't appear interested. I wonder if President Trump has overestimated Iran's willingness to do that under this maximum pressure campaign.
Well, we just don't know. I mean, how much do they have to hurt in order to want to perhaps renew discussion of some of these provisions? We just can't tell.
Final question, just on Iran and with developments in North Korea. You have two countries here. President Trump has tried bromance diplomacy with Kim in North Korea, and he's tried maximum pressure with Iran. You have Iran surrounding the U.S. Embassy, attacking the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. You have Kim threatening to restart nuclear weapons testing, introduce a new strategic weapon. I just wonder, President Trump has said the world respects America again. Do these countries look like they are respecting America here, respecting President Trump, or testing him?
Welcome to 2020. I mean, I think you're talking about two of the significant challenges that we're going to confront in this coming year. I hope they can be managed and not allowed to spill over into some kind of serious confrontation between either of the countries. I do think that possibility exists in both regions of the world.
We'll be watching. Ambassador John Negroponte, thanks very much, and Happy New Year to you and your family.
Same to you.
Impeachment back in the spotlight as Congress will return from break. Big question now, when will there be a trial in the Senate? And we're just moments away from the opening bell on Wall Street in the new year, where markets set to open on the first trading day of 2020. Stocks ended on a positive note to close out 2019. Futures are pointing towards a positive open again today for two reasons. Renewed optimism over trade, with President Trump tweeting about a meeting for a smaller trade deal with China, what he calls a phase one trade deal. And CNN has learned overnight that the People's Bank of China moved to stimulate the country's economy, giving banks the green light to increase lending by $115 billion.
Before the Bell, brought to you by E-Trade. Get $100 on us when you deposit $5,000. Visit eTrade.com for details for a limited time only. And go to CNN.com/beforethebell to stay on top of markets and sign up for the daily newsletter.